Good things don't last forever, and after Inside shipped in 2016, Playdead would never be the same again. Major pillars would begin to leave the indie Danish studio. Co-founder Dino Patti left after what was reported as creative differences with co-founder Arnt Jensen, and would eventually go on to co-found Jumpship with their debut title, Somerville, releasing at the end of 2022. Jeppe Carlsen, who was the lead gameplay designer on both Limbo and Inside, also left the company to found Geometric Interactive with fellow Playdead programmer and composer Jacob Smid. Their debut title, Cocoon, is due out in 2023, and in the words of the studio, is The Legend of Zelda meets Portal. According to Dino Patti, when talking to GamesBeat in 2017, Playdead was around 13 to 15 people when Limbo shipped, as Playdead liked to keep the team lean and contract out when needed. When a company loses this much of its core talent, it just can't be replaced to form the same thing. It will be different. And whatever game Arnt Jensen and the rest of Playdead is currently working on now isn't necessarily going to be worse or better because of these changes in personnel, but it will be different. Playdead took the gaming scene by storm in 2010 with the Xbox 360 exclusive Limbo that would open the door for many indie games in the following years. Limbo was an ultra-stylistic, monotone platformer that was much more than it appeared to be. A few delays, and 6 years later, Playdead released Inside, another 2D platformer dripping with atmosphere and deeper meaning. Both games have a lot of similarities and are not only great games, but they are great experiences that transcend the medium. With the recent release of Somerville, it got a lot of people talking about Playdead again, and I found myself trying to figure out which game was better. When it comes to Playdead 1.0, which is better, Limbo or Inside? Quick warning, there will be plenty of spoilers regarding both Limbo and Inside, as it becomes impossible to compare and dissect what makes each game special without talking about their story and deeper meanings. Some of these themes are also pretty uncomfortable to talk about for some people. Nothing here is factual, as Playdead has never publicly explained the meaning of their games, leaving everything open to interpretation, and that's what makes them so powerful. The amazing thing about art is that beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and their impact will be different for every single person who plays them. Before heading into the comparisons, it's important to talk about each game a little bit first. Limbo was the world's first introduction to Playdead, and there is no better introduction than the title screen being black and white and Limbo occupying about 80% of the screen. It was a bold choice that demanded your attention. There is also no doubt in my mind that after playing Limbo more than once, you are dead. Limbo means the place where souls go right before you pass on to heaven or hell. The inescapable nature of this world shows its Matrix-like qualities when the giant spider impales you. You attempt the same escape again, only this time, the spider still has your corpse impaled on one of his legs before he shakes you off to chase you down again. Could this be sloppy programming? Possibly. But Playdead seems like perfectionist and a studio that would purposely leave that in. One of the main areas of Limbo is the giant hotel in the middle of the forest, which has to be a nod to Hotel California by the Eagles, which has a much deeper meaning than many fans know. It's been known to be about the in-between. I was thinking to myself, this could be heaven or this could be hell, and the line that you can check out anytime you like, but you can never leave. And finally, at the end of Limbo, on the final puzzle, you manipulate gravity so that you can float past giant blades, and when done correctly, you pass through from life to the afterlife after falling to your death in the forest. On the surface, Inside appears to be about mind control and horrible corporations doing horrible experiments on people. For me, just like Limbo, the meaning is hidden in plain sight. The title of the game is Inside, which leads me to believe that the game is a metaphor for what is happening in your body. How sickness absorbs everything in its way, like cancer or mental illness. Depending on what you want to see, it can be there. Once you see something, you can't unsee it, and you might be thinking about the mind control caps all around the game, and the explanation is that those are all lymph nodes, a network fully connecting one part of your body to the next. The blob at the end is clearly the illness that goes after the healthy cells in your body. These scientists all over the factories are actual doctors that are trying to find and help you, but sometimes, just like the dogs, it can hurt you. You travel all around this once thriving world and find abandoned farms, broken down factories, crashed trains, and this is all in the same way that the body was once a thriving habitat. Sickness can derail a lot of things. I think people create what they know and what is close to them. Hyperlight Drifter, for example, has a lot to do with Heart Machine's founder, Alex Preston, who has had numerous surgeries on his heart since birth and still lives with heart problems to this day. The main character is clearly dealing with something terminal, and it's not hard to see that the character is trying to repair the 4 chambers of a heart before it's too late. I think the idea for Inside came from someone at Playdead who had someone close to them diagnosed with something terrible. Art is how many people cope with grief, and Playdead has shown a penchant for dealing with uncomfortable topics, just like the death of a young child in Limbo. When it comes to the critical comparison, Inside gets the edge here with a critical average of 91 compared to Limbo, which averaged an 83. When looking at the art and visuals, the noir minimalist visual style of Limbo is much more attention-grabbing, as there are very few games bold enough to go without color. However, the muted color palette of Inside does a lot more for the game, as the pops of color are much more impactful, and they draw your attention with the reds and the yellows. This also helps with the pacing and accessibility, as these splashes of color serve as environmental assistance. When looking at the gameplay, even though both games are 3-button controls with move, jump, and grab, Inside just feels more refined. When looking at the sound, Limbo perfects the sound of being lost and isolated, but it isn't as varied as Inside, which has so many different sounds, from the absolutely terrifying dogs to the muddy areas to the muffled people of the blob and the underwater sections. The developers even went as far as to record all of the sounds through a skull. The sound of Inside is constantly on a mission to make you feel uneasy. When comparing the atmosphere of these games, the world feels scary and hostile in Limbo, but it's mostly a forest and some small industrial areas. When it comes to Inside, the game is constantly moving from being lost in a forest to abandoned farms, empty roads, giant factories, and human experiments, and even more. The shifting of backdrops of Inside all share in the atmosphere that creates a much larger sense of discomfort. When looking at the meaning and the impact, if we're going by what I think these two games are about, then the symbolism of Inside just hits a little harder. There are very few games that I've played before and after Inside that have left me just completely unsure of what I just witnessed. From the moment you become part of that blob, Inside is like nothing else, and how everything that happens in the game sticks with you for days as you try to wrap your head around what has just transpired. So what is the better Playdead game? I'll be honest, heading into this video, I was on the side of Limbo being the better game, having played them initially when they both came out. Limbo actually resonated with me more due to how original the game was, from the visuals to the concept and everything in between. Limbo also came out of nowhere from a small independent Danish studio that created no expectations for this game. Inside didn't surprise me in the same way that Limbo did, since it was mostly a refinement of the Playdead formula. However, upon recently revisiting both of these games to determine which one is best, the clear winner is Inside. Inside is very inaccessible at first, but returning to Inside not only increased my appreciation for the title, which was already very high in my opinion, but it solidified it as one of my top 10 games of all time. When comparing these two games, there wasn't a single category that I thought Inside didn't win with ease. Dino Patty once said something along the lines that Inside was as perfect a game as the studio could have made, and this isn't egotistical, this is true. It's hard to find flaws with Inside. If there is no such thing as a perfect game, then I think Inside is as close to one as it can get.